Tucker Carlson spent the full hour last night interviewing and analyzing a claim from Hunter Biden's ex-business partner, Tony Bobulinski, who's made a variety of explosive public allegations against Hunter and Joe Biden, and now claims that Hunter Biden effectively cheated him out of millions of dollars in a deal with a Chinese energy company that eventually fell apart. But he and Tucker's broader point was that the FBI intentionally covered it up to protect Joe Biden in the election. Now, a lot of you wrote in asking us, to fact-check that interview, because Tucker Carlson is certainly making this seem like the highest level of corruption at the FBI and in the Biden family, a term that they misleadingly use because they're mostly talking about Hunter and Jim Biden, Joe Biden's brother, who was part of the China deal. It's true, it's the Biden family, but most of it doesn't include Joe. Now, I've long said this is an important story. In 2017, a company with deep ties to the Chinese state sought influence with the Biden family, including not just his son, but his brother. I've also said that those in the left-leaning media often ignored an important story the public deserves to know about, but that I do not believe that Bobulinski's claims were the massive smoking gun or evidence of a cover-up that some on the right claim. Now, here's the essence of the latest claim. Bobulinski says he got swindled by Hunter Biden and the FBI didn't investigate because they were trying to protect him. Carlson went through this and made it seem like this is one of the most grave injustices that have ever occurred and perpetrated by federal law enforcement.
But not one FBI agent could call Tony Bobulinski back, who presented them hard documentary evidence of felonies the Biden family committed? How is that not corruption? And who's behind it?
That's what the hour was like. Now, you're not going to hear me defending Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden is currently being investigated by the same prosecutor appointed by Donald Trump, who began his investigation in 2020. We shall see what happens. The question is, how big a deal of this? This was a full hour. Is this the smoking gun that Tucker and Bobulinski claimed? We're going to sort of do a legal fact check of these claims with the former federal prosecutors handled these types of cases in a moment. First, let me play key moments from that interview that sum up the allegations that they're making. The theme here was alleged Biden family offenses against the U.S. and national security, and in particular here, a fraud against Bobulinski. Here's Bobulinski's summary of how he got into business with Hunter and Jim Biden and how the fraud he alleges occurred.
Sinohawk Holdings.
Okay.
What was that?
So Sinohawk Holdings was a Delaware LLC, which was effectively a partnership between the Biden family, myself, Rob Walker and James Gilliar, and a Chinese large company called CEFC, which turned out to effectively be the capitalistic arm of, President Xi's One Belt, One Road.
And here's where he says the fraud occurred.
And it appears that Hunter Biden, Jim Biden, and the Biden family literally copied the same document down to typos, as you said, the serial number, and they removed Oneida Holdings, which was the Delaware LLC that represented Jim Biden, Hunter Biden, myself, Rob Walker, and James Gilliar, and Hunter and his lawyer, George Maziers, replaced it with Owasco, which was Hunter Biden's law firm or business that he operated. So he effectively swapped out an entity that he owned 20% of to a business that he owned 100% of, which is fraud.
Now, if that happened, it's a problem for Hunter Biden. But one has to wonder if that's true why Bobulinski hasn't sued Hunter Biden and Jim Biden. We'll get to that, though. Tucker Carlson then very dramatically emphasizes what a big deal this all obviously is and how the FBI interviewed Bobulinski, but then allegedly did nothing.
And the FBI took possession of that information.
They did. I don't know where it went.
So
I do know, to your point earlier of one of the reasons why I'm sitting here, during the summer, there's been all this discussion now about whistleblowers coming forward.
And that builds into the crescendo of the interview, Carlson and Bobulinski emphasizing the timing of all this, that the FBI did not follow up weeks before the 2020 election.
It sounds like the election was, I'll just say it, rigged in part by the FBI.
There was. There was. So you can call it rigged, you can call it stolen, you could call it suppressed. The American people can call it whatever they want. But the fact pattern is the FBI alone altered history in that election.
But here's the key point to focus on after this interview. What we don't know. But joining me now is Jennifer Beidel, former Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, where she was a member of the Complex Frauds and Cybercrime Unit. Jennifer, welcome to the show. Thank you very much. You watched the hour. Is it clear that a crime was committed and not properly investigated?
That's certainly not clear from the hour. The moral of the story for prosecutors and for FBI agents is corroborate, corroborate, corroborate. You simply can't build a federal criminal case on one witness standing alone. So you would need to look into these documents that he alleges exist. How were they created? What's the metadata behind their creation? Who were they sent to? Are there other witnesses that corroborate this? We just can't conclude a crime was definitively committed based on the content of that hour standing alone.
And what do you make of his claim that the FBI didn't follow up with him?
What typically happens when there's a report to the FBI, if a victim of a crime makes a report themselves or through a lawyer, is that report's made, information is provided, the FBI or other law enforcement issues subpoenas, further investigates, determines whether to take that investigation further, but then there's no sort of wrap-up memo or call that necessarily goes out to let folks know the conclusion of that. So I don't find it particularly unusual that he didn't get a call back. They may or may not have taken a number of steps in response to that tip. And I think for reasons that protect the integrity of investigations, we don't know about those steps publicly, and we probably shouldn't.
Well, isn't there also the possibility of, as opposed to criminal, there's civil, right? I mean, Bobulinski could have sued Hunter Biden and Jim Biden, but it doesn't seem that he has.
Certainly, and there's a much lower standard of proof required in a civil case. And so one would think that if there was sufficient evidence to prove liability in a civil case by a preponderance, that would be a step you would take, at least in connection with a criminal referral of the nature that he says he made.
So the big question is about Joe Biden's role. I mean, I think a lot of people are waiting, as I am, for the investigation of Hunter Biden to conclude. If the prosecutors there determine he committed a crime, so be it. We shall see. But here's what Bobulinski and Hunter Biden conclude about Joe Biden's role, which seemed a little odd to me, but let's listen.
But there are hundreds of data points that Joe Biden was acting in a capitalistic term, I would say the chairman. The chairman of J.P. Morgan doesn't take 8 meetings down with the people, analyzing companies. The chairman serves a purpose, right? He's a figurehead. He shows up at meetings, shakes hands, advises, has faith in his team. Effectively, that was Joe Biden's role in the Biden family business ventures and around the world. And not just my venture. I met with him multiple times. I think it was the Daily Mail that made a recording public where Joe Biden reaches out to Hunter Biden in December 2018 after the New York Times had published an extensive article on CFC, Chairman Yi, and how they were deploying billions of dollars around the world with different governments basically acting as the capitalistic arm of One Belt, One Road.
So I'd like to play that voicemail. This is from the sitting president of the United States. This is from Joe Biden to his son, Hunter.
Hey, pal, it's Dad. It's 8:15 on Wednesday night. If you get a chance, give me a call. Nothing urgent. Just want to talk to you. I thought the article, at least the thing online, it's going to be printed tomorrow in the Times, was good. I think it's clear. And anyway, if you get a chance, give me a call. I love you.
I mean, that's it.
That's staggering. The sitting president of the United States. But that's Joe Biden in his own voice telling the American people, I was always well aware of the business ventures my family was involved in. So much so I could tell my son I read a detailed article that has 50 facts in it.
I have to say, that's one of the areas where I felt that I lost faith in Bobulinski in terms of his credibility. He seemed so partisan in suggesting that that particular voicemail, which I think you're clear, could mean anything, meaning Joe Biden reads the article in the New York Times. He knows that Hunter Biden's nervous about it and worried about it and scared. And he says, I read the article and I think you're clear. Oh, this shows he knows everything about everything. There it is. There's all the proof. I mean, the bigger issue, and I think that that's a credibility problem for Bobulinski here. But what do you make of the argument that Joe Biden served as a figurehead? It sounds like he's suggesting that, and I'm sure this is true in many cases, you have someone who runs a company who doesn't do a lot, right? But you still need proof of the person's role in the company rather than just saying, well, he was a figurehead.
Absolutely. The role in the company and in the criminal context connected to the crime that was supposedly committed. So you need particularized knowledge on the part of that person connected to the crime. I certainly don't see that in that voicemail. If that's the proof alone that exists with respect to Joe Biden, I can't see a prosecutor or the FBI taking that very far at all, even if we weren't talking about the President of the United States.
Yeah. Let me just offer some final thoughts to everyone. Look, I'm not minimizing what Bobulinski's saying here. I take his allegations seriously. I've covered them. I've focused on them. I'm not ignoring them. I'm also not mocking them. But they are nowhere near as conclusive as he is claiming. And that's the difference between allegations and the conclusions that they're drawing from them, which are all the most dangerous and insidious possible, as opposed to what are the much more likely conclusions as to why certain things happened. And that's why we had Jennifer Beidel on today, because she's dealt with a lot of these cases to talk about the practicalities of it. Jennifer, thank you very much for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.